Welcome to the second Make in India conference hosted by Impact Media and Events Corporation. I am your host, Vipul Jani. The topic this time is IT and manufacturing. Today, we have a stellar lineup of tech leaders and organizations who will enlighten us with their knowledge and rich experience. A special thank you to the High Commission of India in Canada for supporting our Make in India conferences. This is the second Make in India conference in a series of 4. And today we also have a partner organization in CII North America. So with that brief introduction, let us get straight to it. Nagasara, if we can bring up the next slide. So a quick introduction about the organization. Impact Media and Events Corporation is a media and events company in Brampton, Ontario, Canada since 2002. IMEC publishes Canada-India Insight, an e-paper focusing exclusively on Canada-India bilateral relations. We have a Canada-India Insight YouTube channel, a podcast, and a Facebook page in the same name. Cabinet ministers from Canada and India, senior ministers from various Canadian provinces, high commissioners, ambassadors, and consul generals from Canada, India, and USA, presidents and CEOs of large companies and prominent personalities from different sectors continue to participate at IMEC events, both virtual and in person. This is what we do. Canada-India Insight Conference, Canada-India-USA Trilateral Conference, Consul Generals Roundtables, Business Leaders Roundtables, Political Leaders Roundtables, Canada-India Insight e-paper, Make in India conferences, provincial conferences, education forum with colleges and universities all across Canada. We have already done 2 sessions with presidents and deans and registrars of colleges and universities in Alberta, in Calgary, in Montreal, in Winnipeg, in Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto, even Haryana and Michigan. We do several speaker series lectures, a Celebrating Success Gala, India at 75, a new project that we have added, which will continue for the whole year, with gala, food festival, specialty publications, and more. And 2 new projects that we have taken up. One is a Canada-India house real estate project that we are now putting together, and a vegetarian food bank. So let me recognize the sponsors for IMEC: Skylink Capital Corp, Seneca College, Pavi Bining, One Place, Tangentia, ICICI Bank, Efficienska, and Make in India conference is supported by the High Commission of India. And we are thankful to our partner organization for today, Confederation of Indian Industry. So let me welcome our partner organization and our co-moderator for the first session today. Suchita Sonalika is the director and head of North America at the Confederation of Indian Industry, and she is currently based in the Washington DC area with nearly 15 years of experience in international business, marketing, public policy, and communication fields. She is responsible for managing initiatives that promote India, US, and India, Canada economic relations by way of business preference conferences and programs, two-way trade and investment missions, as well as research and policy-related projects. Prior to this role, she was the head of CII's UK operations based in London. She has represented CII at multilateral fora, such as the B20 and the Commonwealth Business Forum. She represented CII on the advisory board of the Birmingham Business School, Manchester India Partnership, as well as the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, and served as a mentor to the Commonwealth First Program for SMEs. Suchita joined the international division at CII headquarters in New Delhi in January 2009. Earlier, she consulted on various international marketing projects in key global markets. A graduate of the Robert H. Smith School of Business, She specializes in international business and holds a master's degree in public policy from the University of Maryland. A busy mom of a toddler, she enjoys creative projects at leisure. So over to you, Shuchita, before we invite the High Commissioner.
Vipul, thank you so much. This was a very, very long and lovely introduction. Thank you. So good morning and good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Confederation of Indian Industry, let me add my own welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to work with our friend Vipul Jani at Impact Media, and of course, partner with the High Commission of India and Invest India in our collective efforts to enhance the bilateral economic relationship. High Commissioner Bisaria, thank you so much for joining us. It's always enlightening to hear your views, and you've been so candid and so approachable and brought diplomacy, not just to the business community, but also civil society organizations. So thank you so much for your tireless efforts as you meet business and government leaders in Canada and share with us the opportunities to enhance this. And Deepak, you've made Invest India into the powerhouse that it is today, and we're so pleased to support your efforts. We'll also be joined later by Mike McCabe, President Director of the Tata Group today in North America, who's been a champion for the Indian business community. So thank you all of our esteemed speakers and attendees joining us today. For those of you who don't know, CII is India's premier business association, and I had CII operations for North America, primarily focusing on India's business ties in the US and in Canada. Our initiative, CII India Business Forum, brings together Indian companies with a significant footprint in terms of investment and job creation in North America, and serves as a platform for policy advocacy, knowledge sharing, networking, and building brand India. Our flagship publication, Indian Roots, American Soil, highlights the contribution of Indian companies in the US. Our survey in 2020 captured the presence of 150 participating Indian companies who've contributed $22 billion in investments and created 125,000 jobs in the US. It is one of the most authentic sources of primary data on Indian industry in the US. And we are working on a similar survey-based study to highlight the contribution of Indian companies in Canada. We aim to complete this study by the end of this year. So if you are an Indian company investing in Canada and you have not heard of this survey, please get in touch, and we'd be delighted to share more details to participate in the survey and get a stellar report on Indian companies in Canada going. In 2020, despite the volatile economy, trade with India retained its growth momentum, and the investment story has also been fairly positive. We look forward to hearing today expert views from government and business on how they foresee the trade and investment situation evolving, the lasting impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and what measures we can take to bolster business as we emerge into this new normal. Of course, in the past few weeks, there have been signs that COVID is retreating, and while the uncertainty remains, what we have seen is that in-person gatherings, at least in small controlled environments, have begun, and there's an inclination also to resume travel. And all of this really means that the future is could be a much more encouraging in terms of facilitating business than I would say even a few months ago. And this may be the best time to revisit the bilateral engagement, explore new areas of synergy and cooperation. And with those comments, let me turn it back to Vipul to begin the proceedings for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Shuchita, for those opening remarks. So I believe Deepak ji has to go in about 10 minutes or so, 10 to 12 minutes, I guess. We also have the welcoming remarks. Ajay ji, do you think is it okay if I invite Deepak ji first and then we give the remarks? Because he has got only 10 minutes and we want to also ask him a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Please start with Deepak.
Okay, so I'm very sorry about that, but he just told me that he has to leave in 10 minutes. So we want to hear from him, also ask him a couple of questions, and then I'll come back to you. Deepak Bagla has a professional career of over 3 decades with the World Bank, Citibank, and private equity, having responsibilities across Europe, Africa, and Asia. He is currently the Managing Director and CEO of Invest India, the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency promoted by the Government of India. Invest India is also the execution agency for Startup India and the Prime Minister's Science and Technology Initiative. He is a member of several high-level government committees, including FinTech, Innovation, and Infrastructure. Mr. Bagla is on the advisory board of the government's $7 billion fund of funds for MSMEs and the investment committee for the government's $1.5 billion fund of funds for startups. Mr. Bagla has a bachelor's degree with honors in economics from St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, and a dual master's in international diplomacy and international trade and finance from the School of Foreign Service, Georgetown University, Washington, DC. So as I mentioned, we have to make some quick changes, last minute changes to the lineup. So we'll hear from Mr. Bagla, then we'll ask him one question each, one from me, one from Suchita. Then we'll go back to the High Commissioner for the official welcome remarks. And then we'll get back to Rudraksh at Invest India for their presentation. So over to you, Mr. Bagla.
Thank you, Vipul. Excellency first, my sincere apologies. And thank you very much for allowing us that we could come in and make a few comments. But Suchita and Vipul, thank you very much for getting us together. I'm glad you're getting, it's a very important time. And I know Rudraksh is going to cover on a lot of interesting things which are happening, but I thought very briefly to share with you some points of what has happened when we've been in this virus. Very quickly, 31st March this year, we closed with an FDI of over $81 billion, 81.7 to be more precise. Very interesting 3 points about it. One, we are probably one of the very few countries in the world where FDI went up by over 10%, while global FDI went down by 35%. And in fact, probably the only country which moved up in its rankings on FDI receipts from number 8 to number 5. And that too in the midst of one of the most unprecedented lockdowns in history. But what's very interesting about this is that the 71.7 billion, or this 81.7 billion has come across from 89 countries. That means the trust which India now gets from a larger number of the global community is very high. And that is growing. And that is a testimony to the government and its very effective policy measures and execution of those measures, which has happened very rapidly. The second interesting point is that it comes across 63 sectors. The rapid transformation which has happened by these policy measures adopted by the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, and the government have opened up the sector to an extent where India remains now one of the most open economies on the planet, with private sector having the ability to play a role in each and every sector. 63 sectors. And that also to a large extent explains as to how we've got the largest FDI in our history so far. But the most heartening point for me is that this FDI this time has come into 29 states and union territories. This is very interesting. Remember, investment comes into a state in India. And this broad basing across so many states across the country, virtually covering the entire landscape, is one of the biggest elements which we are seeing, which is transforming India today. And please remember, each state has a very strong USP to it. There are sectoral strengths, there are other strengths which are lying there. And that means that a larger bouquet of opportunities are there for investors, both globally and locally. And these are very interesting points. And let me quickly just share with you some interesting things which have happened even when the entire world was in the lockdown, what happened in India. Apart from the fact that we gave free food grains to over 800 million people, but very interestingly, a drinking water tap was created and reached the households of over 50 million households. That means over 300 to 400 million people, individuals, got drinking water during this point of time when we went through the entire exercise and what is being looked at as one of the world's largest water programs. On healthcare, we all know what it was. We've done close to about 800 million vaccines. We've run over 600 million RT-PCR tests. And please don't forget, when we started this pandemic in March 2020, we just had about 20 odd labs which were doing this. And today that has increased by over a factor of 1,000. So how fast India is changing, that shows you. And the last point which I do want to make is that the economy is now back on a strong track. The Nomura Business Recovery Index, a very interesting index where the base year is February of 2020, is now at 105, the highest ever it has got. So basically stating that we are now back on the economic parameters to a pre-COVID level, in fact, higher than the pre-COVID level, which gives us a very strong level of optimism that India is fast on its record of being the fastest growing, largest economy on the planet, which is what we were before we went into the pandemic. And by all estimates, the statistics are anywhere between 9.5% to 10.5% growth rate, which is what we are expecting sometime this year. So frankly, it's very heartening to see some very strong green shoots. The investment opportunities are back. There have been a number of very strong incentive schemes, which my colleague Rudraksh will be speaking more about. But it is all in all to say that we are looking forward to a very strong and optimistic future. Thank you. With that, Vipul and Suchita, back to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that very optimistic, very promising, those remarks. It will certainly instill some more confidence and enthusiasm, as people have been really struggling, looking forward to better days ahead. So I will ask you one question, as I mentioned, and then Suchita can pitch in with one. So the pandemic, as you know, is now more or less contained, not just India, but almost everywhere. People and businesses are itching to recover lost ground. There's a lot of talk about diversifying supply chains, reducing our dependence on a single source. While India has been actively promoting Make in India and other initiatives, how has Invest India's approach and hand-holding services changed between the pre-pandemic times and today? And what is the net impact on the ground?
I think the biggest thing, Vipul, which has happened is when in the lockdown, and the numbers are basically testimony to the opportunity space which is available in India and the amazing work which is happening by the government on the policy side. But specifically on Invest India, we moved completely onto the digital framework. We had a number of investor outreach efforts on digitization. And also, if you look at it, the national single window the soft launch happened just last week, which is a single portal on which you can come. There'll be one application form, a consolidated one. And with that, you will be able to get most of your approvals, both in the central government and the state government. And it's a soft launch which we've done, and it's going to keep becoming more and more comprehensive. We have the national NSW, where you can come onto a portal again and see where land is available across the country. Click on that portal and you'll be able to see the attributes of that land parcel and that plot of land. And soon we are again going to be bringing it to a position where you'll be able to apply for it from that. The third, again, digitization again is the National Infrastructure Pipeline and the National Asset Monetization Pipeline, another new initiative which has been launched under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister. And you can find all investment options which are there, over 10,000 projects. And you can just go on to that and have a look at that. And that also gives you information on what is the stage at which those respective projects are. So the level of digitization and the adoption of digitization by us is also the same reflection of how digitization is taking over by MSMEs, by individuals, by large companies across India. And that is what is getting them ready for a future-ready scenario. And the moment we are out of this COVID, and hopefully, Vipul, what you say should be true, hopefully we'll be able to keep the third, the expected or the anticipated, or hopefully not anticipated third wave in control as much as we can. But yes, in many ways, the balance sheets have become leaner. Digitization is bringing in a high level of efficiencies, and it is bringing in, and it is going to lead to a remarkable level of growth the moment we move out of this pandemic. Thank you. Back to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. Suchita, you want to pitch in quickly with one question?
Sure. Thank you, Deepak. All of the digitization efforts you mentioned, I feel COVID or no COVID, they are here to stay, because at the end of the day, they make ease of doing business so much better for all of us. I was going to ask you a little bit about what you're seeing from Canada in terms of interest towards investment in India. I mean, we've seen a lot of Indian companies' footprint in recent times increasing in Canada, but that's mostly focused around the tech sector. What have you been seeing from Canada, and what sectors would you encourage Canadian companies looking to make in India as such?
Suchita, I think the number of sectors now, according on the India-Canada corridor, have gone up to about 23, 24. The wide base across the sectoral interest between these two countries has expanded tremendously. And I must give complete credit here to all of you, but most interestingly, the leadership by the High Commissioner, Mr. Bisaria. He has really stepped it up on that one. And, as I speak to you, the team is currently working on 75 business proposals. And interestingly, let me just run through: water, space, roads, oil and gas, logistics, gems, jewelry, auto, leather, electronic systems, electric vehicles, chemicals, aviation, tourism, retail, e-commerce, railways, medical devices, media, entertainment, consumer goods, biotech, banking and finance, auto, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, metals, education, defense, textiles, construction, food processing, IT, energy. I mean, the list goes on. And just if I looked at this list 3 years ago, there were just about 10 to 12 sectors. So this has gone up enormously. And the one very interesting thing which I'm seeing coming up very aggressively is on the startup and the innovation side. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest pillars on which the strength of this corridor is going to grow very strongly going forward. So thank you very much, Suchita. Excellency, so good to see you, as always. And really I have to thank you immensely, because the way you've led all of us and guided all of us, that's where I was sharing with you these sectors. That's why I went through that list, to show the enormous interest which has been created because of all the efforts which have been made. And thank you very much. The team is there. As you know, we have a dedicated team, and Excellency leads that all the time. And with your permission, Excellency, will it be okay? Because I've just been called in for this urgent meeting, but I had to be here. So if I may please be excused, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Deepak. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for being here. And I think Invest India is the game changer in India's whole investment ecosystem, and you have been leading it. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for taking so much interest in the India-Canada corridor. And thanks for being here with us this morning.
And I must disclose to everyone that you are my senior in college who had ranked me enormously, but remain our favorite and my team's favorite. But thank you very much, Vipul, Suchita. Excellency, with your permission, please, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak ji. Thank you for for joining us today, and we'll keep in touch, and we'll be happy to bring you back at a later date event.
Thank you. Will be a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so Nagasrat, if we can go back to the presentation for the introduction of the High Commissioner, please. Sorry, sir, that had to be a last-minute improvisation to the program. So His Excellency Mr. Ajay Bisaria is the High Commissioner of India to Canada from March 1st, 2020. Previously, he was India's ambassador to Poland, with concurrent accreditation to Lithuania, and also served as the High Commissioner of India to Pakistan. Earlier, Mr. Bisaria was posted at the Indian Embassy in Moscow and served as Under Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs on the East Europe desk, and then moved to the Ministry of Commerce in the era of economic liberalization. He was posted as First Secretary in the Indian Embassy in Berlin, and later appointed as a private secretary to Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Bisaria was posted to the World Bank in Washington, D.C. as advisor to the Executive Director for South Asia. In 2009, he moved to Delhi to serve as Joint Secretary Eurasia in the Ministry of External Affairs. The High Commissioner is fluent in Hindi, English, and Russian, and has working knowledge of German, Polish, and Urdu. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Vipul. Thank you for that generous introduction. Greetings to our organizers from both IMEC and CII and all distinguished panelists, and of course, all friends joining us today, both from India and Canada. Welcome to the second edition of the Make in India virtual conference. Let me begin by thanking IMEC and Vipul for taking the lead on convening this conference, which I think in many ways is so well timed. And thank you, CII and Suchita, for joining hands in making this possible. And thank you for this focus on manufacturing and IT, because I think we've been talking about a generic India story for long, and it's good to drill down into two very promising sectors. I already mentioned Invest India, which has been a wonderful partner in this journey and certainly a game changer in the kind of policy response we have to foreign direct investment or foreign investment from India. It just symbolizes the new flexibility and the new dynamism in our policy environment. We also have two rich panels going forward on both IT and manufacturing and presentation from Invest India. So what I thought I would do is just talk a little bit, as Deepak did, about the big picture and the opportunities as we see them in the India-Canada corridor. As we've been discussing, we are hoping that the third wave will not come, and we are on top of the public health crisis. We have, in terms of vaccines alone, a good story of beating back the pandemic. At least about half of India is today has at least one vaccine in arms. So we have numbers of over 670 million vaccines which have been delivered, at least one to each to 670 million Indians. And apart from that, more than 230 million odd are doubly and fully vaccinated. So we are fairly confident of being on top of the public health crisis, and therefore our attention is now on the economic crisis, the underlying economic crisis. And there too, we have a good story to tell, because the recovery has been even better than we were hoping. We are, as Deepak mentioned, talking of, in terms of various predictions, a growth rate in the coming year of between 9.5 or 10 to 10.5%, which would make India a major engine of the global economic recovery. And the Q1 first quarter statistics are already telling us a good story. We had a 20% growth in the first quarter, the April to June quarter of this year, and compare that to a contraction of 24% in the previous year that we had seen. And that itself shows that it speaks to a recovery of both demand and supply, which would be sustainable. And it also speaks to the fact that India is on its way to realizing our ambition of having a growth that is green, that is sustainable, and that is also rapid. I think there are two important factors in terms of the pandemic impact. And the first would be the accelerated digital transformation. We've been talking about that in various contexts, but it has certainly accelerated the process of digitization that was going on. And the second is of redefining the supply chains. And we are talking in India of more resilient, more reliable supply chains that India will be a part of. And I think this is certainly two very broad lessons we can draw from the current recovery. And the future of India, therefore, will definitely be digital and based upon the country becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. India is already an IT powerhouse. We hope that process gets accelerated with this digitization, but also in terms of becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. And the story of startups, which would lead in terms of creativity and innovation over the next decade, is also, I think, an important part of this picture going forward. And that is why I think this conference and its subject is very relevant, because we are talking of both IT and manufacturing as the opportunity in India. Looking at the India opportunity and what has been going on in India, I think one of the benefits which we are seeing is the fruit of the structural reforms that we undertook early on in the pandemic and during the pandemic year starting last year. And you would recall that we had, apart from a fiscal and monetary stimulus, deep-seated economic reforms in a host of areas, in the factors of production, in land, labor, in capital, in making technology more accessible, but also in terms of improving the conditions for business, the ease of doing business, and sectoral reforms, whether it was telecom or real estate or agriculture or education, and now in manufacturing in terms of the production-linked incentives. There was a series of reforms, and I think we're beginning to see the fruit of those reforms as supply and demand picks up and we move forward to a new sort of trajectory in our growth. And what we have also seen, and Deepak referred to it, is a great deal of policy flexibility and innovation in India, and a lot of creative approaches to policy and listening to the investing partners from overseas, particularly as we've seen it in the India-Canada corridor. And just to cite some examples, for instance, retrospective taxation as an idea was done away with. The production-linked incentive schemes have been introduced, which have been serious ways to promote manufacturing and incentivize manufacturing in a number of sectors. We had the National Asset Monetization Pipeline, which again is talking of the host of opportunities of over $80 billion that are available in the assets monetization space. We've been talking about strategic disinvestments of Bharat Petroleum, Air India, and some of the public sectors, which will again throw up huge investment opportunities. Infrastructure financing is becoming more structured, and I'm sure we'll hear this from Invest India, but broadly the $1.4 trillion national investment pipeline is a huge and promising opportunity in the corridor, as indeed is the long-term prospect of the $4.5 trillion that we hope to invest in this sector. More than 20% of it would be coming from private sector and private resources. And therefore, that becomes a huge opportunity, even apart from the reforms in specific sectors, ranging from telecom to vehicles in terms of the vehicle scrappage policy and so on. Also, in IT, the fintech sector, just to take an example, has been hugely promising. It's been a major achievement with 65 companies that have now turned unicorn, with 28 of these companies coming up in this year, in a pandemic year, 2021. So I think the fintech sector has been a particular success story. And then in the India-Canada corridor and overall, we see the startup ecosystem. Much of the value in India over the last decade has come from newer companies, and we've seen an acceleration even in pandemic years of unicorns, of the number of startups, which we expect to go up from to very large numbers by 2025. So I think overall the climate at this point of time is one of hope, one of rapid recovery, and one of huge unfolding opportunities. Coming to the India-Canada corridor, This has been a success story in multiple ways. We had decided on a strategic partnership in 2015 when Prime Minister Modi had come to Canada. And since then, the headline of this economic partnership has been the increase in portfolio investment from Canada into India, which went up from about $5 billion to more than $60 billion now. And this has signaled in multiple ways the faith of Canadian business in the Indian economy. So today, the largest global investor in India is Brookfield of Canada, with an exposure of more than $20 billion. We've seen the investments go up with multiple pension funds who are making now more risky investments in terms of direct investments. They want to be there in India in the longer term as we speak to them. And therefore, what we have is a situation of Canadian financing becoming a very important part of the India infrastructure thrust. And the number of $50 to $60 billion now is expected to double to more than $100 billion by 2025. So this is symbolic of the kind of confidence that Canada has in India. The overall economic exchange is over $100 billion. If you count trade, which has been rising, and investments and tourism spends, we expect this to double as well by 2025. And Canada would be very much part of the India story of fueling India's growth with technology and financing as India moves towards becoming a $5 trillion economy in the next few years, and then $10 trillion economy by the end of the decade. What we also saw in this corridor was exemplary cooperation in COVID times, in pandemic times, when India sent as the pharmacy of the world pharmaceuticals and later vaccines as the vaccine maker of the world. And Canada returned the favor in the brutal second wave we went through by sending a large number of oxygen plants into India, apart from various other kind of immediate needs for India. So what we saw was two strategic partners cooperating in a stressful time. We are now working on a joint COVID vaccine, which is going to be manufactured in Hyderabad, made by a Canadian company. We also have multiple other areas of cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and in the larger political sphere. So I think this is a story of strong collaboration, and we continuously look for other ideas on promoting this partnership. And I'm sure many of these will be thrown up in the conversation we have today. Coming to the IT sector, I would only make a couple of observations about what we see in the India-Canada corridor. We have more than 20 Indian IT and fintech companies active in Canada today, including major players like TCS, Wipro, Infosys, Tech Mahindra, Paytm, ICICI Bank. And all these I see are planning to expand operations. India's IT firms have a growing footprint in Canada, encouraging. We've seen companies like TCS, and I went to Calgary recently, and they told me about the growing footprint of Mphasis and Infosys, which are creating offices there and with thousands of employees that they're going to recruit. And the advantage that Indian companies are seeing, for instance, in Calgary, was the availability of cheap rental space when in the overbuild that Calgary went through in the oil and gas sector. That has become an opportunity for the IT sector for India. So we expect more than 5,000 jobs, new jobs, to be created by Indian IT companies in the near future. And of course, conversely, it gives Canadian companies a huge opportunity to leverage the Indian competitive services of IT and ITES companies to enhance their own global exposure, and particularly given that India's IT sector is going to see a huge acceleration. On manufacturing, again, we have more than 600 in Canadian companies in India, active in India across sectors and increasing their investments. We've seen a continuous interest in services, in energy, in advanced manufacturing, in construction. So a whole range of sectors where companies like not just Bombardier and McCabe, the larger companies, but also smaller companies in the SME sector are looking at the India opportunity. For instance, just in the SME sector, the company which was responsible for oxygen plants that were sent to India has now decided to make in India and make oxygen plants in India using their unique technologies, and not just manufacture for the Indian market, but also for the Asia Pacific market. So I think in our conversations with the CEOs of a lot of companies, including in the small and medium sector, what we're seeing is a great deal of enthusiasm about India and the supply chains. And also, as they look at the global geopolitical context, they're looking at reimagining and reshoring these supply chains. And a lot of times you find the answer in India and India's investment climate. So let me stop right there with this very promising story. I'm sure we'll drill deeper into more opportunities in both manufacturing and IT. But I think it's a whole overall scenario in the India-Canada corridor of a great deal of potential as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a very detailed, actually, those detailed remarks. We certainly learned a few new things as well, as always. So we have another change, actually. Harshvendra Soin also has a meeting with the CEO. So we'll have to bring him in as well a little bit earlier than we planned. Anyway, so we have two quick questions for the High Commissioner before we move on to Mike from Tata Sons. So my question to you, High Commissioner, before I ask you the question, I mean, you have already answered most of it, but I must say, when you came to Canada last year in March, you said you were a virtual High Commissioner because of the lockdown, the pandemic restrictions and whatnot. So I must say now you have more than made up for it. From a virtual High Commissioner, I can now call you an everywhere High Commissioner. You have been everywhere. So that is my question for you. You have been crisscrossing Canada, visiting one province after another, one city after another, meeting many, many prominent Canadian companies, businesses, political leaders. So although you have already addressed, as I just mentioned, what do you hear from them regarding Canada-India relations, their own interest and investments in India, as we have also gone through elections recently in Canada. So that is something new. Although it's the same government, but it has come back. So in short, where do you see the train going in terms of Canadian companies investing in India, especially under the Make in India initiative?
Absolutely. I would say that in my conversations across Canada with a large number of boards, and I make it a point whenever I travel to meet major companies, whether or not they're already in India, to talk about the India opportunity, I would say I hear two things. One is that there is a strong confidence in the Indian economy and India's prospects, and not just because of the investment, the recovery, but the overall India story of democracy, demography, and demand. So it's not just the market and the demographics of India's, the structure of India's workforce, but also the fact that democracy, rule of law will be an assuring and reassuring factor in India, and that India will continue to be welcoming and open to to investment and not be springing any surprises. The second issue I see is of worry about the overall geopolitical climate in the world. There are many shocks. There are other places where the predictability is much lower, and therefore this ship is turning slowly of looking at alternative supply chains, and a lot of companies are coming up with a, if not an alternative to China policy, a China plus one policy of looking at options. So I think this is an interesting kind of feedback we get from a large number of Canadian companies.
Sure. Thank you for that. Suchita, you want to ask a question to the High Commissioner?
Sure, High Commissioner. Thank you for this opportunity. My question was going to be a question that you get asked all the time, and I was actually advised not to ask that question because this is every platform asking you. But I can't resist because it seems like there could be some movement on this, and you probably have guessed already that my question is about the foundational trade pacts that India and Canada have been in talks for a long while, several years. And we're just keen to understand more about the India-Canada Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement and also the Canada-India Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement discussions and how they're progressing, because there seems to be some government to industry consultations at least happening in India. So I just wanted to get a sense from you on where we stand now and what you see as the timeline for perhaps being able to close these agreements. But then my primary question is really around normalizing travel now as a means to enhance business. And, could you share any developments on, the travel advisories for India in Canada? Are there any talks of harmonizing global vaccine standards, for instance? We understand that Covaxin has been under active review of the Canadian government. So when do we expect things to open up a little bit more so we can finally bring our delegation from India to Canada? Thank you.
Absolutely, Shruti. I think both great questions. First, coming to the ease of doing business in the corridor, certainly mobility has dramatically improved. Now we have daily flights between Canada and India. In fact, 10 flights from Vancouver, about 10 flights from Toronto and 7 from Vancouver. Both Air India and Air Canada are flying with working very closely with our Canadian partners. We managed to get into a situation where we have made these flights operational along with a few mitigation measures in testing and so on. The next step is to further ease this mobility. And for that, we are working very closely with our Canadian partners. And that would mean, as you mentioned, the recognition of Covaxin that is under Health Canada's consideration. But I think the larger point to be considered is that all vaccines that are WHO approved for travel purposes, those need to be recognized, and this is something we keep sensitizing our Canadian partners on. So we are hoping to move towards a regime of vaccine recognition of WHO approved vaccines for global mobility, and we are also hoping to get some movement on the issue of vaccine certificates, some standardization, because I think that is also easily done, but we are beginning to have these conversations. In Canada, the issue is certainly that there is no common Canadian vaccine certificate because you have different provincial vaccine certifications at this point of time. But certainly as global mobility increases, we will have these issues that we need to work out, and I'm sure we'll land at a good space. On your very important question about trade pacts, the good news is that we made a great deal of movement forward with Canada on what we are calling a limited trade package or an early harvest agreement. We've had several levels of several rounds of expert level discussions on this. And we are hoping that soon as Canada's new cabinet is formed, we will take this process further. And we have had industry level consultations in both countries. And we are hoping that in a matter of months, we reach something that is we can land at a mutually acceptable agreement. And similarly, in an investment promotion agreement, we've resumed the conversations. We've had very productive rounds of expert level meetings, and we hope that we have both these agreements in place next year, so that we have a situation of further facilitating economic exchange in this corridor.
Thank you, sir. So with that, we have to make some more improvisations again. With Suchita's permission and Mike's permission, I talked to Mike as well just now. Harshvendra Soin from Tech Mahindra, he has got an urgent meeting to go to, so I will bring him in first, and then we'll go to Mike, and then the rest. So thank you, Naga, for bringing up the slide. Harshvendra Soin heads the Human Resources and Marketing function as Global Chief People Officer and Head Marketing at Tech Mahindra Limited. Before his current role, he was CEO and Country Head at Tech Mahindra Canada, prior to which he led Global Leadership Acquisition and Development, and he was also the Head Business HR for APAC and IMEA, Telecom and Enterprise for Tech Mahindra. Prior to Tech Mahindra, Harsh was the Chief People Officer at Fortis Healthcare Limited. He was working with Aditya Birla Retail Limited as Chief People Officer before Fortis, and he was responsible for the rapid scale-up of the organization. Prior to Aditya Birla Retail Limited, Harsh was with Bharti Enterprises as a Senior Vice President, People Excellence, before moving as the Head HR for Bharti Retail. He has also worked with the Oberoi Group and Panwar Limited. He is a member of the HR committee at FICCI. Harsh is on the executive committee of the Global Forum on Migration and Development, an initiative of the International Organization of Employers, Geneva. He's passionate about sports, loves to travel, and describes himself as a creative and a high energy person. Over to you, Harshi.
Thank you, Vipul, and very good morning to you, Your Excellency, High Commissioner Ajay Bisaria, and of course, all the other ladies and gentlemen who've joined. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you to share my perspectives and experiences. And I'm representing Tech Mahindra, which is a global IT firm having more than 140,000 employees across 105 countries. I'm thankful for the opportunity, and I must compliment the organizing committee to have such a pertinent discussion. And when I look at, and I love what His Excellency said, because when I look at two global giants, India and Canada, in one frame, one conversation, magic is bound to happen. And especially, sir, you talked about in terms of synergy, collaboration, and leveraging each other's strengths. I think the opportunity is rare, but the opportunity is real. When I talk about the Indian IT industry, and His Excellency talked about it too, but what's interesting to note is today, as of 2020, India's IT workforce was almost about 4.5 million employees. And in 5 years, the Indian IT industry is expected to touch about $350 billion, with over 31,000 companies today in India. So obviously, that's exciting. And what's more exciting is that the new business models that are expected to account for almost about $150 billion of opportunity. And that certainly represents many opportunities for us to collaborate with Canada. TechM and Canada have a long-standing relationship, 17 years, because we started way back in 2003. And we have about 3,000 associates, about 60 clients, and 3 large delivery centers. And what's interesting is that we are expecting to double that number in almost a year, because that's where our focus has been. What really works, ladies and gentlemen, for large organizations like ours is the fact that we want to strike a balance between global and local workforce. For us, it's almost 50-50, which is quite unique. And despite the pandemic, we almost hired close to 700 people last year. So that's how much we are growing in Canada. We have a huge investment in people apart from the employees, that is the sizable employees that I talked about. We train about 100 fresh graduates from local colleges. We also have program tie-ups with various colleges like Waterloo University, University of Windsor, University of Toronto, British Columbia, etc. But we have been investing in India, and also the skill that's been really exchanged between the two countries, especially in new ideas, new technologies with the Canadian government and academia. We've been at the helm of intelligent electric vehicle charging system. We implemented that in the Niagara-on-Lakes Hydro. We signed an MOU, as I said, with the University of British Columbia to develop industry solutions in the exciting areas of IoT, big data, and also signed an MOU with the Premier of Ontario, Tech Mahindra, and the Indian utilities to promote business in the province of Ontario. So there is a lot that we are currently doing and expect to do in Canada. I can only say that as we look at the war on talent that is happening today, we are focusing on few countries really as nearshore centers for us. And one of the countries that we are really looking at to grow and develop is Canada. As I said, our expectation and our plan is really to double the significant workforce that we have there. And I think the benefit is basically to both countries, because really we have also invested significantly in the ecosystem. And Your Excellency, you talked about this really in the startup ecosystem and the investment that companies are doing. So we've pledged about $100 million a few years ago on new niche technologies, and we are only enhancing our commitment to continue our journey of ensuring that new niche technologies and skill development, skill upskilling is really taken to Canada in a really big way. So I think this is very pertinent, and I love what His Excellency talked about. I think it's a very holistic perspective you give us, sir, but I can only tell you that the IT industry is very excited with this collaboration. And I think between India and Canada, two countries, two global giants, I think would only benefit if we take it to the next level. So thank you, and all the best to all the participants.
Thank you, Harshi, for that. So I will ask you two questions myself now. First one is, you have been in Canada for a long time, and now you are back in India in a more senior capacity than before. India is considered a net exporter of tech talent, while Canada is considered a net importer. So what impact do you see of the pandemic, prevalent bilateral relationship, on the jobs, especially in the tech sector? Automation is also impacting jobs in the manufacturing sector in both countries. So how can Canada and India address that constructively?
That's a great question, Vipul. And I've been always speaking about what I call the new normal or the now normal. And we have seen that, the way we do business has changed, but the business per se has actually enhanced. As I was talking earlier, that we have actually gone ahead and hired almost 700 to 800 people, even during the pandemic last year. Now, the interesting thing is the opportunity lies on both sides. While there is labor skill, people going from India to Canada and impacting positively the economy there, we also have exciting innovations that are happening jointly. Even for us, we are doing some very exciting joint innovations, whether it's with the Canadian academia or with the Canadian companies. And in many cases, we have done joint go-to-market with many Canadian companies. So it's actually a win-win. I wouldn't say it is one country only sending across skilled workforce to the other. I think it's a win-win because it's really a synergy between exchange of what I call niche ideas, exchange of what I call go-to-market ideas between the two nations. And I think as far as pandemic is concerned, IT industry is something that really has helped many industries actually do well, because really, which was the whole IT backbone has enabled work from home or work from anywhere. The whole IT backbone has enabled organizations to find a new way of doing things. We have established gig working in a large way. And I think what I can clearly see is this business perspective only growing and not coming down in the months to come.
Sure. So just to build on what you just said, work-life balance, etc. Pandemic has also forced people to rethink their work-life balance, working from home and many other things, which many people really believed were totally unthinkable, 2 years ago. But now we have been living through it, working through it. As a global people officer, what impact have you seen in Tech Mahindra in both Canada and India offices? And do you think these changes in our lifestyle, in our working styles, are they short-term, medium-term, or are they here to stay?
So firstly, I think the impact has been deep, and the impact is significant and here to stay. However, the way we visualize work in the future, and we call it future-ready workforce that we are trying to build as many IT companies across both the countries, it is always going to be hybrid. Now, the percentage of hybrid, how much hybrid it is depends on many things, including, of course, the local laws, depending on how the situation is as we go forward on the pandemic. But clearly, we have been taught a new way of doing things. We must also understand that while it has been a social calamity, the pandemic has taught us how to use diversity and inclusivity better. The pandemic has given wings to the fact that now the workforce is a global workforce. The entire world becomes easier to, for example, for us to employ folks sitting in Canada and vice versa, because it's virtual. And it's no longer restricted only to physically being in Canada and companies physically being there. So I think what I really see is that work from anywhere is here to stay. The model, which is hybrid, will vary, but the opportunity that it brings along with itself to really employ people across the world, hire not only full-time employees, but also gig working. For example, in the last year or so, we've hired lots of folks who were actually stationed in Canada. And they're impacting greatly in building what I call the post-pandemic scenario for us. So I clearly see a significant shift in the way we do work, but it will be hybrid. It will not either be work from home or work from office.
Thank you, Harsh, for that. And thank you for finding time in your busy schedule. I know you have the next meeting waiting for you. So you can join us, as long as you can. And now we'll go to our next speaker. Nagasarath, if you can bring up the slide for Mike McCabe, Tata Sons. Suchita, you can introduce Mike.
Thank you, Vipul. And thank you, Mike, for your flexibility and adjustment to the schedule. Mike McCabe currently serves as the resident director for North America at Tata Sons, the principal investment holding company and promoter of Tata companies. He's responsible for Tata Sons government affairs and strategy development across North America, and works with Tata companies to help them strengthen their presence and positioning in the US and Canada. He is an international public policy and corporate affairs veteran with experience developing and implementing government affairs and communication strategies across various industries. And he is also the chair for the Confederation of Indian Industries India Business Forum for North America. And we're so grateful for his leadership to that forum as well. Thank you, Mike. Over to you for your remarks.
Thanks, Suchita. How are you doing? Hope everything's going well. Just want to thank everyone, IMEC, CII, and everyone else for this opportunity, bringing everyone together on these important topics. I'd like to particularly thank the High Commissioner and his team across Canada for all the work they continue to do to bring our two countries and peoples together. Clearly, as we heard earlier, they have been quite tireless in their efforts over the last year and a half and even prior to that. First, I want to wish all my friends in Canada a early happy Thanksgiving this coming Monday. As an American, we have another 7 weeks or so to wait to celebrate ours. As was mentioned, I head up Tata Sons in North America. I've been in the Tata family for more than 16 years, much of that time with Tata Consultancy Services, one of a number of our companies that are in Canada. For the Tata Group, Canada continues to be an important geography. The ease of doing business, the welcoming, skilled immigration system, the highly skilled talent, the natural resources, all demonstrate the enormous potential that the Canadian ecosystem brings for an investor. We currently have 7 group companies operating in Canada across multiple industry sectors, employing more than 5,200 individuals. As I mentioned, this includes TCS, a global leader in IT services. And my TCS colleague, I believe, is speaking later on, so I will leave him to share more on that thriving business. Tata Steel Minerals Canada has a mining operation in the provinces of Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec, where they extract iron ore for sale with customers around the world. Tata Consumer Products, with their Tetley tea brand, a UK-based brand, is the #1 tea brand in Canada. Tata Motors has Jaguar Land Rover, another UK-based brand, which has dealers in various cities and vehicles on roads across Canada. And as tomorrow is October 8th, and the new James Bond movie is opening in Canada, I would be remiss if I did not encourage everyone to go and see it, not only for the great acting and story, but also for the driving performance of the many Jaguar Land Rover vehicles throughout the film. I plan to see it. Through a wide variety of these operations, our businesses are deeply entrenched across 3 key areas of developing infrastructure, playing a critical role, especially in the services sector, and leveraging the innovation ecosystem, which benefits not only our operations in Canada, but also has potential to strengthen the overall Canada-India relationship. Canada and India have identified several priority areas which could benefit the overall commercial relationship. Key ones include in the energy sector, conventional nuclear energy, as well as renewable energy technology, development of India's urban and transportation infrastructure through both funds and material services, increasing collaboration between Canadian and Indian education systems to improve education and technical skills, helping India with commercial research and development to support innovation in both internet and communications technology, and increasing Canadian exports of food and fertilizers to address food security issues in India. And Invest India, who I believe will be giving a presentation later, has also outlined various opportunities in a number of sectors in India, which I'm sure that they'll go into. The Tata Group has varying levels of interest and presence across many of these areas. Specifically, I'd like to say that the gaps that the pandemic brought to light in healthcare, social safety nets, education, investment in digital technologies, and supply chain resiliency call for collaboration across like-minded countries and businesses. On R&D and innovation, there is a lot that India can benefit from the innovations coming out of the Canadian market across industries and deploying sustainable solutions that benefit the needs of the growing population. The knowledge partnership between the two countries holds tremendous potential to be explored. Our own companies invest in developing and leveraging this ecosystem within Canada in a variety of ways. The most important one is through our partnerships with a number of universities. Tata Trust and the University of Toronto have partnered to establish an urban research center and an entrepreneurship hub in India. TCS also partners with the University of Toronto and the Rotman School of Management across various initiatives, including leadership engagement. Tata Steel Minerals Canada has partnered with McGill and the University of Laval on various research projects. I'd also like to highlight some of the most recent investments that our group has made globally in select sectors, which to my mind would be areas of enhanced interest. We will continue to explore opportunities across these and other identified themes where Canada-India commercial ties can be leveraged. For example, as has been mentioned before, there are opportunities in the electric mobility, EV, and battery technology space. Tata launched a comprehensive EV ecosystem last fiscal year called Tata Universe, providing a unique One Tata collaboration platform for companies to leverage mutual competencies to support e-mobility in India. Our group continues to explore further synergies in the EV space to widen our portfolio offering. Jaguar Land Rover has a goal to make Jaguar an all-electric brand by 2025 and Land Rover all-electric by 2030. And to address future disruptions of autonomous, connected, and shared mobility, Tata Motors is evaluating an automotive software and engineering vertical within the group. Tata Sons is also exploring opportunities to invest in lithium cell manufacturing to establish a proper supply chain for its zero-emission vehicles in the coming decade. The pandemic highlighted gaps in global healthcare and the need to equalize healthcare globally. The Tata Group launched a healthcare venture, Tata Medical and Diagnostics, last year during the height of the pandemic to develop leading-edge patient-centric solutions. While the priority of the company was to develop, launch, and scale the availability of affordable diagnostics to treat COVID-19, in our future roadmap, Tata MD Check Diagnostics will be extended to other diseases and medical applications as a comprehensive diagnostic tool. The Tata Group has set up Tata Digital to build digital businesses that will address the needs of Indian consumers as well as businesses. The goal at Tata Digital is to bring together this acumen, deep technology expertise to simplify lives and deliver enriched consumer experiences. And a number of acquisitions and investments have already been made in this area. And the group has also invested over $1 billion to set up Tata Electronics to seize on the promise of high-tech manufacturing of electronics, precision manufacturing, assembly and testing, and semiconductors in the medium term. The group has also made significant investments in 5G network infrastructure as well. As a group, we are committed to fully integrating sustainability into our businesses. Our companies are working very hard to put time-bound goals to ensure planet resilience. Accordingly, many of our companies like Tata Power and Tata Steel are making investments in technologies that would help them achieve their targets for carbon emission, reduce water wastage, while at the same time increase capacity. You will see investment in renewable energy technologies and green hydrogen as key themes our companies would look to invest into in the near future. Needless to say, the Canada-India trade and economic relationship has grown in recent years, but the potential has not yet been met. I have outlined some key areas where industry in the two countries could look to collaborate further, but that is just a small sample of the possibilities. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you for giving all those insights. And trust me, when we watch the James Bond movie, we will look out for the car. That was a nice one. So here is my question for you, and then Suchita will also ask a question. So the name Tata, as we all know in India, is synonymous with trust, honesty, forward thinking, and passion for the common man, not just company's own bottom line. At a time when Canada-India relations seem to be driven more by business to business and people to people ties. What is the way forward for a more meaningful corporate-led relationship that can bring the two countries closer and also improve the lives and livelihoods for people in both countries?
Thank you, Vipul, for the question, and again for the opportunity. I think, and thank you for that mention of the kind of values that the Tata Group has espoused for the last 150 plus years in all of its business endeavors around the world. We are very focused on ensuring that the communities in which we operate in get the benefits that they richly deserve, and otherwise our businesses won't grow and those communities won't grow. And so everywhere that we do business, we invest back into the community, and that's very much true in Canada. As I mentioned, TCS, and again, my colleague will be here later, they do a lot on the STEM education front, investing in K through 12 schools across Canada to ensure the students of today are prepared for the high-skilled jobs of tomorrow. Our office does a lot of work with an organization called First Book on literacy initiatives, both in the US and Canada, ensuring that students in underprivileged communities and schools have the books and reading resources that they need to be prepared for later studies. We also do a lot of work at the college and university level on enhancing people-to-people ties. We have an initiative that we launched 2 years ago now called the Tata Global Internship Program. And we work with schools around the world to bring interns into India. Of course, the pandemic has made that all virtual, but hopefully that will restart as an in-person program, bringing students into India to intern with a number of our companies back there, furthering those connections between them, their countries, and India. And during the pandemic, we've done a lot. Obviously, in India, we've done a huge amount, but also in our countries around the world where we operate. For example, Jaguar Land Rover worked with a number of medical and health-related organizations, including the Red Cross, both in Canada, the UK, and other countries, to lend their vehicles to help transport personal protective equipment and other medical equipment at the height of the pandemic. So those are just some of the initiatives that we have done. I know a number of companies from India have similar values and have done a lot of initiatives to demonstrate their commitment to those communities in Canada as well. I think you're muted.
Yeah. Oh,
there you go.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mike. Over to you, Suchita.
Thanks, Mike. I'm so very well aware of all the community activities and the corporate social responsibility initiatives that you undertake both in the US and Canada. So thank you very much for the contribution beyond the investment and jobs and investing in these communities. My question is around hand-holding by government agencies for companies looking to invest. Like, for instance, we've seen a lot of favorable policy initiatives being undertaken by the government of India, and Invest India was on earlier, and they've done impressive outreach to attract global companies into India. I was wondering if you have seen a similar approach or a similar level of hand-holding for Indian companies willing to, looking to invest in Canada, whether it's at a federal level or at the provincial level. What has your experience been with such investment-related handholding?
No, thank you for that. And I would say that we have, as I mentioned, we have 7 companies in Canada. We have over 5,000 employees across those companies across Canada in a number of provinces, and they are growing. I know TCS recently made an announcement of a new office and expansion in Montreal, and other companies are growing as well. So our experience in Canada is a good one, is a positive one. We've had very positive interactions with the Canadian equivalent to Invest in India. I think it's just called Invest in Canada. And they've been very helpful. I know a number of our companies have interacted with provincial agencies and government offices and have always had good experiences and support. I can say that, Canada definitely has a very favorable, high-skilled immigration system that has been, revamped in recent years to attract more highly skilled talent. And that is always a positive thing for any international company looking to invest and grow in another country. So I would say that all of those and many more are examples of the welcoming environment that Canada provides to investors from India or anywhere else for that matter.
Thanks very much, Mike. This has been so useful to listen to your views, and great to hear that the supportive environment really works both ways, so we can amp up the investment in both directions.
Thank you, Mike, for those insightful remarks, and also for helping us out today. There's been a lot of improvisations in the sequencing of speakers today. So we will go next to Rudraksh from Invest India for their presentation.
Thank you, Vipul. With your permission, I would like to share my screen. Please let me know when my screen is visible.
Yes, we can see. I can see.
Great. Welcome everybody. So as it has been mentioned earlier during this presentation, during this forum, that India is on a growth curve. There is an accelerated growth being seen in India. In terms of GDP, it took us 63 years to get that first trillion of GDP, only 7 years to get to the next 1 trillion, and only 3 years to get. Now we are at a 3 trillion economy. That shows that India is a growing and resilient economy. In terms of FDI, we've taken 14 years to reach the 300 billion mark, 4 years to reach the next 500, and 2 years to reach a net cumulative FDI of 681 billion. That shows the level of trust which the global community has in India. It has in the manufacturing, in the overall ecosystem within India. And as Mr. Bagla said earlier, this FDI has been coming in from 87 countries across 29 states and union territories in India. So the FDI distribution across the globe is quite spread out. And within the country, there is not a single state which is attracting a large number of FDI, but India as a whole is growing. In line with PM Modi's vision of 5 trillion economy, we see sectors like auto, IT, BPM, defense, construction growing tremendously, but also a very important sector in this aspect is electronics, which is expected to reach 250 billion by 2026. And these are COVID adjusted numbers. So these are the numbers which were released after the pandemic hit. And still it shows that India has a very strong growth curve growing ahead. And most of this growth is being fueled by the level of internet penetration that we have seen in the country and level of per capita income that has grown. In terms of Aadhaar enrollments, which is the Indian equivalent of Social Security, we have seen 1.25 billion enrollment in a population of 1.3. That is a great penetration of Aadhaar. We have over 700 million internet users, 1 billion bank accounts, 1.2 million mobile subscribers, which shows that there is a great level of internet penetration within the country. There is a huge per capita income. There is a huge disposable income, which people are now using to buy mobile phones and other IT hardware equipment. We also have the largest startup ecosystem. We have a great tax reform in place, which I'll cover in the next couple of slides. The major propellant of this growth has majorly been IT and electronics manufacturing. When we talk about the Indian IT BPM sector, it is currently at $190 billion, which is expected to grow to $350 billion by 2025. We all know India is a research and development powerhouse. It is the #1 IT sourcing destination. And most of the incremental investment that we'll be seeing in the near future, the jump from 190 to 350 billion will mostly be in emerging technologies like drone, cloud, blockchain, AI, immersive media. With the new PLI policy for drones that just come out along with automobiles, we see a very promising landscape. We are already host to a great number of foreign investors within the country. We have Intels of the world, Google, Dell, IBM, HPE across India, in Gurgaon, in Bangalore, in Kerala, Tamil Nadu. We also have domestic players that have grown to a level which and they're now entertained globally. So we have players like Tech Mahindra, we have players like HCL, we have players like Tata Sons that we just that were just speaking on the panel, and they have now an international audience to cater to. As mentioned before, India is the global R&D hub. Samsung has the largest R&D center outside of Korea in India. Intel has the largest design centers outside of US in India. And we are seeing the design centers of Apple, Amazon, Google, and Uber coming up in the near future. Overall, we have 1,140 R&D centers of MNCs in India, which broadly have 900,000 professionals working with them. With this, I'll move on to electronic manufacturing ecosystem within India, and that is where I think broad hype is. That is where the policy reforms talked about by His Excellency High Commissioner, Mr. Bagla, and other panelists is broadly taking place. So to give you a brief overview of the market, it currently stands at $120 billion. We're envisioning it to rise up to 250, 300 billion by 2025. And this is majorly propelled by mobile phones, IT hardware, and consumer electronics. When we talk about the policy measure, the government has pledged a total of $28 billion in fiscal support. And this is in the form of production-linked incentives, which is the most talked about topic when we talk about policy reforms within the country. When we talk about specific electronics manufacturing, there have been production-linked incentive policies for mobile phones, for specific electronic components, and IT hardware. These are the policies that have already rolled out, though we are planning to have another round of IT hardware coming soon. We also have policies in the form of CAPEX link incentive. So we provide 25% subsidy on capital expenditure, no cap. We also have electronic manufacturing cluster. In addition to the core electronic manufacturing policies, we do have policy support for allied sectors, which are feeders into electronics, or the sectors which electronic feed into. So for advanced chemistry cell, it is absolutely necessary to have battery packs developed within India for indigenous laptops, to have a great ecosystem for laptops. Similarly, for automobiles and auto components, you have a great deal of electronic components going into automobiles. Telecoms, solar, white goods. These are the policies that are either come out or are expected to come out in the near future, which totals 13 billion. When we talk about electronics, we have some major policy reforms coming up in the form of semiconductor fabs, in the form of display fabs. Semiconductor fab being in the news since a decent number of time, given the chip shortage in the world. Display fab is something that the government is also looking to, given that it is a feeder into IT hardware and mobile. We are also looking at promoting domestic fabless product companies. Fabless product is essentially the chip design companies. And we are also looking towards a PLI for hearables and wearables. Overall, if I want to summarize this slide, I would say that the focus is not just on electronics manufacturing. It is also in the allied sector, and we are planning to take a look at the overall electronics ecosystem to boost the policy. Coming to the incentives, the government provides incentives as in a cascading effect. That means we provide incentives at the components level, then at the sub-assemblies, and then at the finished goods. These incentives are in the form of capital subsidies, like I told you, 25% subsidies on electronic components. These are also in the form of production linked incentives, which are essentially incentives on the sales, incentives on the revenue. The PLI for large scale electronics, which was released last year, attracted some major global players like Foxconn, Samsung, Pegatron, Rising Star, Wistron. We also have domestic companies which have pledged really high numbers. We are expected to see a rapid ramp up in their production. Lava, Micromac, Optimus, Paget are the companies who fit this bill. When we talk about PLI IT hardware essentially means laptops, tablets, servers, and all-in-one PC. We have global giants like Dell, Wistron, Flex, Rising Star in this segment. The main rationale of government to have these policies and to build the manufacturing lies on 6 major levers. So in addition to incentives, in addition to reimbursement that they are providing in terms of fiscal incentives, we also have preference to make in India. So the companies which have more than 50% domestic content in their products are eligible for tenders. So we are promoting local manufacturing through that. We have phased manufacturing program in which we have applied duty structures in a phased manner for finished goods and sub-assemblies. We have region-specific exports. We have the concept of trusted value chain, which is really coming up in telecom. They have a trusted portal. So all the government tenders will be through the companies which are registered on the portal. We have technical standards in the form of BIS to ensure the quality of products. So this is what has been happening in the country till now in terms of what is happening in the near future. We have the policy for semiconductors fab. So on 30th of April, till 30th of April 2021, the government invited expression of interest from global semiconductor companies to tell us exactly what the incentive was needed by the industry. And hence, so the government can make a policy which is conducive to the industry, which is conducive to the strategic importance which the semiconductor fab has. Similarly, an expression of interest for display fabs was floated, and it was closed on 30th of April. And now the policy for these two things, along with a policy for compound semiconductor fabs and ATMP, is expected to come real soon. We also have the Fabless Design Linked Incentive Scheme. Fabless, as I mentioned, is broadly around chip design. And through this scheme, we mainly want to target the startups and MSMEs and scale them to be able to cater to the demand of the domestic and global indigenous product market. So I think that's broadly it from my end. Vipul, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for an in-depth presentation, Rudraksh, and apologies for the change in sequencing. So we'll get back to you, in terms of any Canadian company looking for more information or wish to connect with Invest India for that. So thank you once again. And let us move to our next speaker. Nagasarath, if you can bring up the introduction for Mr. Shivendra Singh, NASSCOM. Shivendra Singh is a cross-border trade and investment specialist, currently heading Global Trade Development Department at NASSCOM and responsible for global positioning of NASSCOM and industry. His primary role is to develop, direct, strategize, and implement all NASSCOM international efforts regarding market development, policy advocacy, communication, and outreach activities. On the market development side, focus on identifying business opportunities in developed, emerging, and strategic markets globally, and implementing a plan to access business opportunities in target markets for member companies. The policy advocacy part includes research to evaluation, emerging legislative and regulatory issues that may impact the industry, and making appropriate recommendations and action plan to address industry issues in key focus markets by working closely with various stakeholders. On the outreach side, his role entails maintaining relationship with think tanks, analysts, embassies, Indian missions overseas, partner organization, and country-specific stakeholders, managing inward and outward engagements from companies and visiting dignitaries. Previously, he has enjoyed an entrepreneurial stint, and amongst numerous roles, he was the country head for Scottish Development International, based out of the British High Commission for 8 years. Shivendra has spoken at various global events, including those organized by CNBC, NDTV, ET Now, FT, Economic Times, and others. He has an MBA from University of Warwick, United Kingdom. So we are so glad to have you today with us as a speaker as well. Shivendraji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Vipul. Really a pleasure being here with you today, and great to see such an tremendous array of speakers and a couple of folks from the tech industry as well. High Commissioner Ajay Bisaria and ladies and gentlemen. I think let me start with what Mike said about the Land Rover and the James Bond movie. Just to let everyone know that this James Bond movie, the new one, was released a week earlier in India, so a lot of people have managed to see that, and the fact that our companies are absolutely local is the fact that this was being celebrated by obviously the British High Commissioner in India, and we had a Land Rover Jaguar at his place as well. So that's the kind of think local, act global scenario that we are talking about. I think the High Commissioner kind of pointed out to a number of key areas. We talked about how the Indian tech companies have expanded in Canada. We have about 20 IT companies, and we have a few of them here today. We talked about portfolio investment growing from Canada into India from $5 billion to $60 billion, and expected to grow to about $100 billion. And then the story in India, I could hear our dear friend Rudraksh also talking about it from Invest India, about startups and and some of the PLI schemes that that are moving on quite well. Let me try and take everyone through first how the role of tech sector is evolving and the implications of that. What are the kind of challenges that we are seeing on the horizon, and what is the opportunity, the partnership opportunity which exists between Canada and India? And a number of points have been covered, but I'll try and see how I segregate that from what's been covered. So from a timing perspective, I think it's a very, very opportune time that we are doing this session, primarily because from a tech sector perspective, the role of the tech sector has been even more critical during the pandemic, whether it's maintaining critical health infrastructure, education, financial services. You can go on, and contactless systems have come in force, and hence the role of tech sector has changed. We are talking about the $1 trillion digital plan for India, and how the tech sector would be about a $350 billion sector. But I think the key thing here is the nature of technology work is totally changing. Because as we know that writing software, which used to be the big thing, is no longer going to be that important, because we are going in an era of low code or no code. The High Commissioner also pointed out to the fact that digital transformation, which means artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, cybersecurity, IoT, blockchain, all of that is going to drive a lot of this growth. So much so that it's going to grow from about 30% to 60%, whereas traditional technologies are going to come down from 70 to about 30%. So all the growth is going to happen in this area. Now, what is the challenge? The challenge is, for this to work, we need an effective data utilization strategy. And we at NASSCOM are working to try and see, while the Personal Data Protection Bill comes into force, what are the things that we could look at doing to align cross-border data flows, including standard contractual clauses and some of the other things. And we are working on aligning some of these things with different countries. Coming to the challenges that I mentioned as point number 2, I see it as twin. I see Harshvendra also from Tech Mahindra mentioned that talent is going to be the big driver. The war of talent, we talk about it, and the supply side bottleneck, where for the growth of digital transformation to take place, you need adequate supply of digitally enabled workforce. Now, we in India and at NASSCOM have been working extremely hard. NASSCOM, works closely, in fact, very closely and supported by the government, and our Prime Minister had inaugurated what we call a Future Skills Program, which was on all the new and emerging technologies. And he gave us the mandate to upskill nearly 4.5 million people in the next 5 years, which is exactly the number where the current workforce stands. Currently, also, we've been able to upskill nearly 1.1 million employees, who are digitally enabled. And this is something which is going to drive a lot of partnerships globally, because at the end of the day, this is going to be a supply side bottleneck. And if it is, then all the growth could be a question mark. So how do we work together on the talent side to ensure that we have adequate talent globally? And we heard our member companies talk about local employment. So I think that's going to be a very critical part of the discussions. The second is the geopolitical part, which was mentioned earlier as well. So obviously we are talking about secure technology supply chains, semiconductors, cybersecurity. We know that because of semiconductor chips, our companies, the product life cycle can get delayed by anywhere between 38 to 55 days. This is one of our companies mentioned this to us. And that's going to drive a lot of discussions in terms of the alternate supply chain. And how can we work together? And we are doing quite a bit of that, both at bilateral levels and obviously at a quad level also. This is being discussed. So that's another one. The new technologies, including 5G, 6G, and again come with its own set of issues. And from our system integrator perspective, the role of tech companies are going to be very, very high in that. So there are areas where we could look at aligning. India opportunity, and I think that's very important. Now coming to the Canadian-Indian partnership, I think it's huge and it's immense, and there is huge potential to grow this partnership. The India opportunity, we heard, India being the largest offshoring destination, but the fact of the matter is, from a global capability center perspective, we have more than 1,400 GCCs in India, and comprising about $31 billion. And in this year itself, we've got 27 unicorns which have been registered. And the focus has increasingly, shifted from purely being an IT offshoring to, offshoring in terms of design, engineering, and digitalization to enhance, customer success and obviously faster product cycle. So that's going to drive a lot of change. So much so that, we're now talking about India inside every product we consume. So when a Mercedes-Benz makes their cars, they have a software made in India. When a Cisco does its routers, that's made in India. So there are loads of things which are being made in India. And I think there's that huge opportunity, from an India perspective. We've heard the PLI and the manufacturing, textile and auto, so I'm not going to go into that because there's a huge opportunity there. The other opportunity, I think, is at a government level. This everyone talks about infrastructure and highways. India is leading the way in terms of digital highways. Look at our public digital platforms. They are the 3 amongst the top 10 platforms, whether it's Colin and the app on vaccines, 900 million plus vaccines, given very seamlessly. Whether it's the UPI we talk about in terms of financial inclusion, the UPI per se is probably much more than Visa and Master taken together in terms of transaction and the last mile connectivity. And e-governance and some of the work around this is something which is staggering. And I think at a government to government level, there is huge opportunities to learn from each other. And I think India can pave the way in this specific direction as such. Coming to Canada, huge opportunities. 2.8 million STEM graduates, world leader in IT, quantum computing. The High Commissioner talked about the portfolio investment and fund houses, amazing startup ecosystem, a lot for us to look and work together. And NASSCOM itself in the last year has done two very big programs, one at Collision and the other a specific program for NASSCOM where we brought in about 600 to 700 member companies across Canada and did a virtual program. And I'm so proud to announce that the first in-person program that we are doing, in the last 1.5 to 2 years is going to be Canada. And this is going to be from the 15th of November for about 10 days, covering the East Coast and the Atlantic area. And when we looked at interest, we thought, we will have 10, 15 companies. We have an interest when 100 companies have registered for it. Obviously, we will need to prune it given the COVID protocols, but that kind of shows the interest which we have. And just in the last 2 years, we all hear about the big success stories of our large companies, but a number of our SMEs have set up, centers in Canada, employed 100, 150 people, and that itself is a testimony to the strength which Canada possesses. And I'm very, very bullish about the Canadian market. So that's the opportunity from India into Canada as well. So I'll kind of stop here, but happy to take any questions. But thanks so much again, Vipul.
Thank you, Shivendra ji, for the insights. So I've got two quick questions for you. You have already addressed part of my first question, so you can maybe skip the first part of it. The question overall, I will ask you anyway, is as someone looking after NASSCOM's overseas portfolio, you work with several countries, and where does Canada stand in terms of prominence, priority, or relevance for Indian tech companies? And is it still viewed as a gateway to America, or is it now more on its own 2 feet?
Great question. And let me answer the last one first. This particular program that I'm talking about in November is only a program to Canada, and it's not a program to the US. So, that clearly is a testimony to the fact that earlier programs which we did was a combination of US and Canada, but this itself is only for Canada. And we have a huge amount of interest, which clearly shows that member companies have matured enough to look at Canada per se as an individual market to engage with, and other things could be a collateral. So that's one. In terms of our priority and in terms of our revenues, Canada is relatively very small compared to its southern neighbor, which is practically $90 billion plus. But I think, and I see that as an opportunity, because if I look at how we've grown in the last few years in Canada in terms of engagement, I think that's growing by leaps and bounds. So I'm very confident and bullish that with some of the policies which Canada has, whether it's startup visa programs or whether it's mobility friendly, high skill mobility friendly country, I think there is strong potential for a tie-up, and we at NASSCOM are definitely going to work to ensure that we focus on Canada as a priority market.
Sure. We would love to join you when you are in Canada as well, as we are also putting together several in-person business roundtables starting from next week, actually. And we have about 25 prominent companies that are joining the first in-person roundtable in 2 years, almost. So my next question for you is, with India fast opening up on a fast track of reforms, do you see a reverse brain drain finally happening, not just for individual talent coming back to India, but Indian origin companies or even non-Indian companies setting up shop or expanding their operations in India?
Well, I see, trade as a two-way process. It cannot be a one-way process. So every country has an expertise in some way or form. As far as India is concerned, we have a very, very strong innovation mindset and a very highly skilled workforce. And that's been, a huge reason for our success. But, looking at the Canadian ecosystem, as I said, they are leaders in technology, I mentioned quantum computing, AI, and some of the other areas. And they also have specific niche areas where we could do a lot of work together. So there is a fair amount of complementarity which exists with different economies. The objective for us is to identify those opportunities and work together to create a win-win scenario. Now, when you talk about a reverse drain of wealth or drain of skilled manpower, the fundamental question is, talent is going to be the key driver as we move forward. Everything, is hinged on being able to develop talent and scale it up. Thankfully, we in India are slightly ahead in the game because of our numbers, but there is going to be a dearth. So I think we need to reach a position where all of us work on upskilling programs in different countries to ensure that we are able to develop talent locally as well. And then basically we are sorted out. Otherwise, it's going to be a huge challenge. Because if there is a skills gap, then high skilled worker mobility is something which is going to be there, and it comes with itself certain challenges in terms of immigration policies and geopolitical protectionism. And to be able to sort that out, I think we all need to work together to develop that.
Thank you for that, Shivendra ji. Looking forward to see you in person in Canada next month. And thank you for joining us today as well. So let's keep in touch regarding your Canada visit.
Thank you, sir.
So Nagasrat, sure. Nagasrat, if we can move to our next speaker, Mr. Colin Singh Dhillon, please. So Colin Singh Dhillon is the Chief Technical Officer or CTO at Canada's Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, or APMA. He provides leadership to the Canadian automotive industry through national initiatives like Project Aero, Canada's first zero-emission concept vehicle, his ongoing work in the fields of connected, autonomous, security, and electrification of mobility, or CASE, provides Colin with a global platform as a thought leader in the digitization of the automotive sector. Recruited to lead the APMA's technology outlook and strategic planning, Colin helped to launch APMA's Project Aero, described by the Globe and Mail as an audacious play to build an all-Canadian electric car. Designed, engineered, and built in Canada, this groundbreaking zero-emission vehicle project was launched at CES 2020. Overseeing all technical aspects of this unique lightning rod initiative, he is leading an effort to invigorate Canada's automotive industry. A renowned technology leader, Colin is driving disruption thinking on connected autonomous vehicle technology projects and provides guidance to the automotive sector and multiple levels of government on cybersecurity, mobility, smart infrastructure, and Industry 4 digital manufacturing initiatives. So welcome to the IT and Manufacturing Conference, Colin. Over to you.
Vipul, thank you very much. And I am delighted to be speaking on the second Made in India or Make in India conference today. And to be honest, following on from Mr. Shivendra Singh is going to be a very uphill challenge. I thought that was an absolutely tremendous presentation on the benefits of both India and Canada and why we should be working closely with regards to our near future. I think, stepping back, I think the one thing that, this pandemic has allowed us to appreciate and understand is the capabilities of working virtually. And so I think virtual collaboration should definitely be on the agenda for all initiatives as we go forward as two nations. And I'm, again, just going to simply echo some of the things that have already been said so eloquently with regards to developing high-skilled workforces, both for India and for Canada. I think as Canada grows, we are a population which is 1/10 of our cousins south of the border. The one thing that we have appreciated and we continue to rely upon is the tech talent and general talent, I would say, from India as supporting our growing sectors, particularly the automotive and the emerging technology sectors. India's IIT institutions are globally renowned and recognized, and it is quite common for me to meet graduates from those highly distinguished organizations leading some forward-thinking, globally provocative innovations that are going to help to change the automotive sector as well as the technology sector. I would also say, if it's not already been said so, is that Canada is happy to, and India is more than welcome to bring its OEMs to the shores of Canada. The North American automotive sector is here, and the numbers are obviously recognized globally. We have the Japanese here, we have the Americans here, and I think India's vision and its OE's vision over the next 10 years should most definitely include Canada, especially because of NAFTA 2.0 and how attractive that agreement makes Canada for manufacturing and assembling vehicles. And over the next decade, we are talking electric, zero emission vehicles. And so as India's OEs delve deeper into that technology, I think the work for the likes of Mahindra and Tata and others to do contract manufacturing here in Canada to help support startup EV companies from Canada is an opportunity that should be looked upon and taken. My focus, as my background kind of explains, is around design and innovation, and specifically these days around technology. So if I could take the next few minutes to kind of focus on some of the specifics. Cybersecurity is something that umbrellas or engulfs everything I think we've spoken about today. If there is technology, whether it be software, code, or algorithms, or there is hardware which has the intelligence of software, the one thing that we all have to be aware of is the cybersecurity for privacy and cyber safety. I am proud to be the co-founder of an organization called the Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity. This global organization is bringing together all 10 sectors, which include space, they include aerospace, they include drones and micromobility, includes marine and rail, as well as the automotive sectors. The Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity's mandate is to bring all the sectors together. And so when the topic and conversation of cybersecurity is being had, it is being had as a central conversation, as opposed to a siloed type of conversation. We are all in this together. All levels of mobility are typically using some of the same software and hardware solutions. We cannot afford to be separating the conversation of cybersecurity between the different modes of transportation globally. I think battery technology, you have the basic ingredients of lithium ion, nickel, cobalt, and some nations are blessed with those in abundance and others may not be. But the battery technology is more than just the cells. It is the battery management systems. It is the cooling systems. It is the control units that make these modes of transportation more intelligent. I would implore India and the work that India's companies and tech companies to look at the next gen of BMS. To make sure that, if there are new ideas and potential opportunities, then they do look at partnerships through strategic alliances or JVs with Canadian tech companies. And so we can bring those technologies forward to global OEMs. There's also talk of, moving away from the CAN bus system on vehicles. CANs have been providing a phenomenal role over the past 2 decades, but there is now a conversation about automotive Ethernet. Again, a segment and an area that I feel India is going to be playing a global role as its OEs embrace automotive Ethernet as they move away from CANs. CAN buses are phenomenal for the OEs. There are always a challenge for when there is an expansion of partnerships of technology and software to be embedded into a vehicle. Zero emission solutions, where we're saying Project Arrow, this fully Canadian concept prototype vehicle, which will be drivable, is going to showcase the talent that Canada has to offer. Shivendra has said, including quantum, cybersecurity, all the way through to, artificial intelligence and algorithms. But let's not just rest at zero emissions, I would say to both nations. Let's look at negative emission solutions. Let's make sure that we are looking at the carbon that is already being generated. We would all be naive to talk about how all the vehicles in countries like India and Canada within the next 10 or so years will be zero emissions. The reality is it will take many years for us to be able to remove some of the fossil fuel burning vehicles from the road. And so part of the solution for a circular economy, part of the solution for more ethical design, I feel, for both nations and its companies should be around negative emission solutions. And again, Project Arrow and members of the APMA are working on such solutions, and we'd be happy to broaden those conversations going forth. And then I think, it would go, without saying, we are apparently in the industrial fourth revolution. Those that are in digital manufacturing will tell you that some companies haven't even embraced the third industrial revolution. And so I bring this up because of the importance of digital manufacturing for, implementing both on operational technology, cybersecurity solutions, but also for implementing the IoT or the IIoT solutions, which connect the fabric of the complete supply chains. I also bring it up because Industry 5.0, ladies and gentlemen, is less than a decade away. If you read the news and you see some of the research projects like Elon Musk and others are doing around Neuralinks, the cognitive revolution is not far away. I mention this because of knowing and understanding how cellular and telecom boosted India and its telephone sector from having landlines, which were found typically in the towns and the cities 20 years ago. And then suddenly India and its population went to cell phones overnight to the extent that a lot of my family and friends in India have 2 cell phones because they can. Instead of having a landline which had to go through the old process of laying the lines in the ground. And so as India is about to embark, as we're all about to embark on the next decade, I would implore India and companies from India to be looking at collaborations with Canada around cognitive and industry 5.0 solutions. And so that way we stay ahead of the game. And let's face it, this is a global race. But like a relay race, this is about partnerships. And I think if we make the right partnerships with the right nations, we're all going to be crossing the line in first place. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Colin, for that futuristic assessment as well. And I've got two quick questions for you before we go to our next speaker, Mr. Soumen Roy. So one is for you individually, and one is for APMA. So the first question is, you are actively involved, as we know now, in Project Aero, the all Canadian electric car. As India is also actively pushing for green vehicles, will you be willing and available to assist and work with India on that front?
Absolutely. It's, for those that know that conversations are already happening with Indian companies around Project Arrow and what materializes after Project Arrow. So absolutely.
Okay, that was quick. Yes, so good to know. And the next question is, what are the possibilities for APMA, the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, to explore manufacturing auto parts in India, and what will make you consider it as a viable option?
And just for clarification, the APMA is a trade association, so we are a non-for-profit that doesn't obviously manufacture, but I've been fortunate
Sorry, what I meant to say is to encourage Canadian companies to make.
Okay, yeah. So I've been fortunate to help lead some trade missions to India, like the Auto Expo from 2020. These have always been led with our members who are predominantly the major tier 1 and tier 2 players. I think India has its attractions. I think they're growing. If you read the news today, there is talk of both Apple and Tesla moving a lot of its manufacturing in certain subsectors to India over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. I think the opportunities are there. I think some of the negative connotations, Vipul, are when the likes of General Motors and others are leaving the shores of India. I think what has to be captured is a clear description of why a certain global OEM has left, as opposed to reasons that we can start to kind of come up with as theories. But there is no doubt for me, India is going to be one of the giants of the world, both from a industrial, technological, and a manufacturing standpoint. There is a lot of work for us or India to do. I think, with the smart city initiatives and other initiatives that are currently underway, I think India will continue to play a major role to support, I think, global companies when it comes to manufacturing, specifically around the technology sector.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Colin. So we'll get back to you to take this forward. And thank you for your time today from your busy schedule as well. We are running a little behind, so my apologies for that to all the speakers. So Nagasarath, if we can move on quickly to our next speaker, Mr. Soumen Roy from TCS Canada. In his current role as the country head, Soumen is responsible for the strategic direction of Tata Consultancy Services, TCS in Canada, and leads all facets of the business in the region, which includes fostering relationships with our ecosystem, including industry forums, government, academia, and non-profits, by helping to provide cutting-edge IT solutions and services. Soumen has been instrumental in shaping a broad range of industries all over the world. During his over 24 years of tenure with TCS, he has led the development of significant new business and managed many successful and lasting client engagements. Prior to his current role, Soumen spearheaded the spirited growth of TCS Japan and led in the creation of the joint venture with Mitsubishi Corporation, an active proponent of bilateral trade and passionate advocate of skills development. He contributes to building trade relationships between Canada and India through his various board appointments. They included CORE, the Center for Outsourcing Research and Education, now merged with SCC Supply Chain of Canada, which helps facilitate the sharing of knowledge between buyers, advisors, and providers. Tech Nation, formerly ITEC, Information Technology Association of Canada, and CIBC, Canada-India Business Council. Soumen is convinced that today's teeming tech environment has created a level playing field. As such, how you leverage technology is even more important to success than your ability to access capital. So with that introduction, Mr. Roy, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vipul, for that kind introduction. Am I audible?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. And good morning, everyone. High Commissioner and esteemed colleagues and ladies and gentlemen. This is an absolute privilege to bring in some point of views from my side and to contribute in the minimal way that I can to the agenda of primarily Canada-India business development, and as well as how technology is shaping the world going forward. I will have, I think most of the things have been covered in multiple dimensions with facts and figures. And I was listening to Mr. Singh and Colin. It's so resonating that what I'm going to share from my point of view as well. I have three things to share here. One is how I look at innovation, not just as an innovation, but how we can play the binding material between the Canada-India, business and trade. Second is what opportunity we foresee going forward in the near term from 3 to 5 years. And third is, of course, the synergy that we can leverage between the situations in Canada and India. Let's talk about the opportunity first. If I look into the trade today between Canada and India, and particularly with the agenda of this seminar, manufacturing, it is heartbreaking to see that the top three imports from both the countries have very minimal value additions in from those countries. So if I take Canada to India, it is oil and mineral, it is edible oils, and it is some which possibly is a necessity, but it does not actually take the strength of the country into the product and services that being exported. And it resonates our from earlier talking points that how we foresee that we can change this. Similarly, if I take, on the contrary, even though the numbers are minimal, two countries in the top 20 bracket of world GDP, doing a manufacturing trade of not even 3 billion is very, I would say a lot of headroom to capture upon. Like I said, from that point of view, maybe a little better position from India to Canada, if I see, because they're pharmaceuticals, they're steel, they're organic chemicals, which have possibly as a percentage more value addition from the country that is coming in here. Having said that, which is also throwing upon an opportunity that how much to cover that we go forward. Moving on to that opportunity side of it, I will draw a reference from a global study that we have done, which includes respondents from Canada. Beginning of this year, over a period of 3-4 months, we covered about 1,200 senior executives from a broad range of industries, including manufacturing and including Canada as a geo, and North America and Asia Pacific and Europe and UK, wherein we surveyed these executives on many aspects, and in particular, how the world is going to be shaped, how their business is going to be shaped, particularly with the digital intervention. These companies, just to give an idea, their average revenues that the companies we have covered are 14 billion annually. And there are 26 respondents whose average sales is more than 100 billion. So obviously, they will have a huge contribution in shaping the world, and their opinion will matter most. If I take only the manufacturing side of it, it is such an interesting observation. Even today, about 59 to 60% respondents from the manufacturing industry thinks that they will continue to grow or sustain in the traditional way, while 41% says they are going to be disrupted in the digital intervention. And this is an interesting note, taking a reference from what Colin was also suggesting, is the digital manufacturing is still being not seen that prominently. But guess what? All other studies, including this one, says there will be a 5% uplift in manufacturing revenue because of digital products in manufacturing, which might be 7 to 10% in retail and others, but this is 5%. So it is equitable in that. So the disruption is inevitable and we have to embrace upon that. Now that's the opportunity side of it. It's a huge opportunity in terms of digital manufacturing. It's a huge opportunity between Canada and India because it is much, much under leveraged as of now. Now, if I take the second piece of it, that what innovation can do in this, when is an innovation effective? An innovation is effective if it is applied now. An innovation is effective if it is scalable. And innovation is effective, it is sustainable. Now, how this is unfolding, both for Canada and India in particular, Canada promises an enormous opportunity of innovation in its ecosystem of not just startups, but look at the graduates Mr. Singh was referring to, 2.8 million STEM graduates, and the entire ecosystem of university, which offers much more abundance of opportunity, not just Canadian students, but for global students. So that's kind of an hotbed of promoting and nurturing and contributing innovation and education. Where it lacks, that's where India comes into play as a complementary one. India has enormous talent, and an unlimited, untapped, unnoticed, under-leveraged, frugal innovation. I was just going through, because all of us are probably 25% educated today by the WhatsApp University, but then there are some posts in LinkedIn and WhatsApp which was coming in the last few days where I saw a college dropout. He did not drop out, he had to drop out in Punjab, came back home and actually put on a device which costed him less than 50,000 rupees INR, which he designed himself to put on his tractor, which his father drives otherwise, because of some muscle problem or something, and because of age, he's not able to do it that productively. So this kid picks up that idea that how I can automate the tractor to the fields, if not full time, but at least to augment the capacity that we have. Now, I am sure in lack of scalability, in terms of lack of capital, this might not get to an applied innovation at scale. Just an example. There is so much there which these two ecosystems can actually complement. The capital can go from here, the innovation ecosystem can go from here, and India can become, like Prime Minister's quote, I think from a few months back, it is the AI studio of the world. So that's where I see these two can converge and create and power, which will eventually result in a very high business and trade, which comes, of course, as a tail of this all collaboration. And talking about what India has done and what we can leverage in terms of both manufacturing, not just being a consumer and a market, which is obviously a need for anything to scale up. But from Mr. Singh's point, I just like to highlight three more things is, look at the passport and the Aadhaar of India. A lightning speed, digitally 100% biometric enabled system, which is nowhere matched in the world. It is a backbone of digital India. Look at the payments, the UPI. Like Mr. Singh said, it is more than the Visa and the MasterCard, but what payments have been doing in India is just phenomenal. And I was in a meeting with High Commissioner a few weeks back. He was referring that there's an request for Canadian leaders to see how that can be leveraged. So I think that's a very good direction that we are going. But these are all the things can come in wherein we can actually adapt innovation, which can be nurtured and incubated here, but scaled up in an Indian context. And that's where the real taste of the innovation will come in. And concluding, but not the least, the CoWIN application, the entire pandemic, including the disbursement of the subsidies and others, which has happened in the last year, is just outstanding. But like I said, India lacks capital, India lacks scalability of the innovation in a structured entrepreneur or enterprise way, which can be actually converged with what we have in Canada and make a win-win game for all of us. And that's all from my side. I think it's a privilege to get this opportunity, but I'm absolutely promising. And I did not even touch about the service sector. because I think they are already heavily invested in, they are on a roll. And the more the digital consumption goes in, which all of us are experiencing more so in this last 2 years, this services sector will boom in any way. Thank you, Vipul.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. It's been such a pleasure, such an immense pleasure to finally have you at one of my conferences. As you know, I've been trying to reach out to you for I don't know how many years. So thank you for joining us today. And I know you have someone waiting, so I will be quick. If I can still take liberty, I'll ask you two very brief questions. You can give your brief remarks. The first one is Canada has a robust system of incubators and supporting ecosystem for startups. And as we now notice, more and more startups are turning to unicorns in India. Maybe not as many, but the number is certainly growing to a noticeable number. Do you see a similar support system now emerging in India? And do you also envision a larger Canadian involvement in that going forward?
Very interesting. I will give a collateral example here. If you just search in Google, Canada's 50 richest person, you will see 5 of them are less than 40 when they become billionaire. And all 5 of them leveraged startups and technology. If I just take a cue from there, it's not about personal wealth. It's about the ecosystem or the thought process that has been able to generate that quantum of value for the market and the economy.
Yep.
What I possibly do not see that is at an accelerated pace, the entire governmental or the trade platform in India will be able to promote systematically that kind of churn. But given that there is a market which is leading and asking, and given that there are enough frugal entrepreneurs there, I would say by default, systematically, they will grow. But if I have to learn something from here, the entire business ecosystem, the ethos of the ecosystem, the policies and others in which Canada is much more ripe and matured in promoting those startups. If we can learn something in India from there and make it much more easier, much more cleaner, much more sleek, then that will promote that kind of unicorns coming up there. And just imagine, if I converge 3 market size of 3 provinces in Canada, that will be itself be smaller than 1 mid-sized town market possibility in India. So to Mr. Singh's, the advantage of scale is absolutely there. So where you cool culture and where you can multiply innovation, you need a scale, and that's where it goes.
Absolutely. So we can hope to see some larger Canada-India cooperation in that.
Absolutely. And my passion is that this has to grow. There is no reason why this cannot grow 10 times and not 60 billion. Why not 100 billion?
Absolutely. Sure. So the next question is, when it comes to Canada-India bilateral relations and trade, especially in the tech sector, what are you most enthusiastic about, and what, according to you, needs urgent attention?
I don't think anything which requires an urgent attention at any enterprise or a individual company level. But what I think is, which is more of a global need, and also not Canada and India is not excluded, is maybe Harsh has spoken about this, is while we scale the innovation, while we adapt to the market needs, while we produce new goods and services, how we also can keep the talent upskilled and reskilled to the newer needs. So if any policy between the two, I'm talking just on the service industry per se, but essentially cutting across there, because one of the observations which Colin also mentioned is the cybersecurity threats is coming up at every level and every industry. So if I have to pick one thing which we can make easier, it will be the ease of the mobility of talent cross-border. There are still, and this is not this is not only specific to Canada. For example, if I need a talent today, either I can organically grow it or I can inorganically, and this is the same talent pool everybody is looking at. And COVID has actually dissolved the boundaries totally. But there are still taxation laws and others, even within Canada. If I take an example, that if I have an employee to hire in, I don't know, in Saskatchewan and make him work or make her work in Ontario, there might be something still not. And these are not deficiencies, these are evolving because we have never seen this kind of needs. So if at all something can be done in terms of thinking process, putting more mind share into it, I would think the international mobility can be, looked into in a different scale so that the talent becomes a global pool, the talents become easily accessible because it is all about now and here.
Thank you for that. And sorry to keep you waiting. We were running a little bit behind, and there have been a lot of changes in scheduling as well today. So, but glad you could join us, and hope to take this dialogue forward. So once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you.
Okay, so let us move to our next speaker. Give us one quick moment. Jaimin bhai, are you still there? Okay, let's take the video first. I think Nagasrath, if you can bring up the slide for Sara Wilshaw. Sara Wilshaw is Canada's Chief Trade Commissioner, and she leads a team of over 1,400 business-savvy experts in 160 offices abroad and all across Canada. She plays a key role in delivering on the mandate of the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. This includes supporting Canadian businesses to take advantage of Canada's free trade agreements, increasing and diversifying trade. Sara has spent over 26 years in the federal government, served abroad as Consul General of Canada to the South Central United States, based in Dallas, as Trade Program Manager in New Delhi, India, as Counselor at Canada's Permanent Mission to the World Trade Organization in Geneva, and as the first Secretary at the Embassy of Canada in Japan. She also served as Director General for Canada's Diplomatic and Trade Mission Network in North America. And prior to becoming the Chief Trade Commissioner, she was part of the Foreign and Defense Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister of Canada's leadership team. So we'll play a small short 5-minute video for Sara Wilshaw, Canada's Chief Trade Commissioner, and then we'll move on to the next speaker.
Hi, people. Let me start with a big thank you to you and your team for inviting me to speak today. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to address this group of business leaders, and I'm really happy to see people trying to grow the ties between Canada and India, particularly in the IT and manufacturing sectors. But before we begin, I want to acknowledge that I'm participating virtually from Ottawa on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And I'm really pleased to connect with all of you from the various territories and communities in which you are located today, too. As Canada's Chief Trade Commissioner, I know how important it is for companies to have a trusted place to turn to for help in accessing new markets and opportunities all around the world. And that is exactly what Canada's Trade Commissioner Service, or TCS, has been doing for more than 125 years. The TCS brings expert market knowledge, local contacts, and on-the-ground support that we know is invaluable to Canadian companies. And we also know that most of our 15,000 clients are small and medium-sized businesses, the backbone of the Canadian economy. It's our goal to help these businesses expand into new markets, and we get results. Our clients export 20% more in value and 25% more markets on average compared to other exporters. And if that isn't reason enough to come and talk with the Trade Commissioner Service, I'll give you one more. It will cost you absolutely nothing. In fact, over the last year, the TCS delivered tens of thousands of free services to more than 10,000 Canadian organizations and supported our clients in signing more than 1,300 commercial agreements with an estimated value of over $4 billion.
No
We
problem.
also brought in more than
time,
120
so
new or expanded foreign direct investments worth over $2 billion and creating nearly 6,000 jobs in Canada. And we've helped to develop nearly 150 research and innovation partnerships all around the world. So that's a little bit about what we do. But most importantly, I want all of you to know that we are here for you. And we are ready to help you go global by using our network of more than 1,200 trade commissioners located in 160 cities worldwide. In
Okay.
India alone, the
Okay,
TCS
okay,
has
okay.
50 people working in 8 offices in Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Chandigarh, Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Ahmedabad. All cities that I've been to, all with a lot of exciting things happening. Before the pandemic, our team in Delhi was working with around 750 Canadian clients, 500 of which were invested in India with an on-the-ground presence. Our clients in India are super active in all sectors of the economy, and we see particular interest in places like digital industries, in agriculture and agri-food, in life sciences, infrastructure, automotive, and in clean tech. Lots and lots of scope in there. And in the first 4 months of this fiscal year, we know that our team was providing 36% more services than the year before. So we're definitely seeing that interest grow. And it's not just the TCS supporting Canadian companies. Our portfolio partners like Export Development Canada are very active in India, and several other federal departments, including Ag and Ag Food Canada, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, the National Research Council, and Natural Resources Canada. We also have a number of provinces we're working with and who are very well represented and active in India and on the ground there. Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and we've got another province, New Brunswick, going to be joining us in 2022. So I think all of this points to a really increasing level of engagement and opportunity between Canada and India. And it's frankly a pivotal moment for international trade, particularly as we inch nearer to a post-COVID-19 economic recovery period. To be clear, though, some have done very well through the past year and a half. Those who are able to pivot their business to e-commerce channels or who offer goods and services in high demand globally, they've continued to grow. But we're looking for an economic recovery that is more inclusive, one which supports more businesses in getting back out there. And we need great Canadian companies like yours to be leading the pack, reclaiming lost market share and filling gaps in supply chains disrupted by the pandemic. I think we can all agree that one of the best ways to help our businesses and our economies recover and to safeguard them from future economic shocks is to expand and diversify our trade and investment relationships. So given that this is a conference on IT and manufacturing, let me just underscore that in terms of technology solutions, Canada is very strong and very well known in this area. Canadian businesses know that they need to invest in intangible capital to succeed in an increasingly competitive global knowledge-based economy. And IP plays an essential role there in helping companies to generate a return on those intangible assets. IP matters for companies in all sectors. And this is another area where the TCS is ready and willing to help you navigate the risks and the opportunities of foreign markets. In fact, we're continuously improving our programs and services to try and better serve a diverse group of Canadian companies, including SMEs of all kinds. We offer a variety of tailored services designed to help support high potential and high growth firms to scale up and to expand their exports into new markets. Deepening our commercial engagement with the broadest range of high growth global markets is essential to our long-term prosperity. And to ensure that that growth is sustainable and inclusive and resilient, our efforts have to go beyond diversifying where we trade to addressing who's trading, what we trade, and how we're trading. We're looking for diversity in all its forms. And we're committed to ensuring that Canadian companies operate responsibly when abroad by providing them with the guidance and tools necessary to make responsible business conduct, or RBC, a cornerstone of their business practices and to advance Canadian values. So the future is far from certain, but with vaccines rolling out around the world, we think we are well positioned to take advantage of new trade opportunities while addressing our economic recovery challenges. So a big thank you to all of you for your interest in everything you do to support Canada's growth and economic prosperity. Thanks so much and have a great day.
So that was Sara Wilshaw, Canada's Chief Trade Commissioner. And she sent us this pre-recorded message. So let us move to our next speaker for the day. Nagasarath, if you can bring up the slide for Jaimin Shah. Okay, so Jaimin Shah, he's the co-founder and CEO for Dev IT and DEVX. He has more than 25 years of experience in the IT industry and carries a bachelor degree in computers. As co-founder and MD of the company, Jaimin is focused on strengthening strategic partnerships and to make it a next generation global IT consulting and end-to-end IT services company. He is currently co-chairman of ASSOCHAM Gujarat State Council, board member of NASSCOM Foundation, and trustee of Devang Mehta Foundation Trust. He is immediate past chairman of Domestic Council of NASSCOM, past chairperson of ICBC Gujarat region, past chairman of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Gujarat region. He is also a past president of Gujarat Electronics and Software Industries Association. So over to you, Jaimin bhai.
Thank you, Vipul bhai. I don't want to take much of the time because we are running really late. But I continue with what Shivendra and Soumen spoke about IoT, AI, and innovation. As our Prime Minister said that India should be the AI hub in the world, and Canada can be the university of AI if at all India wants to be a AI hub in the world, because we all know that Canada has a great potential and great technical potential about artificial intelligence as well as Internet of Things. So when I talk about opportunities for Indian IT companies, there are many testimonials that when we acquired a company in Canada in year 2012, when I was a part of Vibrant Gujarat delegation, and then around 12 to 14 Gujarat-based IoT companies, they established their hub in Canada. So this is a testimonial. I don't want to go much into the detail, but whenever I go and talk about Canada, there is a huge opportunities as far as Canada is concerned in India. Canada always bring delegation as far as smart cities were concerned, and still it's a huge opportunity for Canadian IT Canadian companies. As far as Indian companies, Canada has a big potential for technical expertise, where Indian IT companies as well as tech companies can take advantage of Canadian tech ecosystem. And that's how we are committed to Canada as far as establishing DEVX, which is a startup accelerator and co-working, which is one of the biggest co-working in Gujarat currently, and having pan-India presence. Due to a pandemic, we could not able to establish our first ever DEVX in Canada, but now very soon in next year we'll be having DEVX in Canada. Though we have a nearshore center in Prince Edward Island, we are planning to expand beyond PEI and beyond Toronto in Canada. This pandemic opens lots of opportunities for tech companies as well as tech enthusiasts. And this COVID gave us more opportunity, more innovative ideas, how to attract talent, not only from India, but those people who have migrated from India to Canada and to work from Indian company sitting in Canada. So that's this kind of hybrid scenario. It is working very well for us since last 6 to 9 months. And we are hopeful that we'll be increasing more and more people, Canadian people, working for Indian companies and for overseas US clients in near future. But let me congratulate Vipul bhai for continuing his focus on bilateral relations between India and Canada, and organizing this kind of seminar on and often, and my best wishes to him as well as entire team so that we can have more events like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaimin bhai, for the concluding remarks. Actually, due to the change in scheduling, you were the last speaker for the day. I hope you found it interesting, picked up a few new things, just like a lot of us. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping out with the conference as well. You helped us out, to reach out to a couple of speakers. So I appreciate that and thank you sincerely from everybody here. So Nagasrath, if you can just bring up the sponsors slide one last time, and then we'll have the closing remarks. So let me thank our sponsors for today, because of whom we have been able to do this events and conferences. IMEC sponsors, we are thankful to the following annual sponsors who support our platform. They include Skylink Capital Corp, Seneca College, Pavi Bining, One Place, FSNs Canada, ICICI Bank Canada, and Tangentia. The Make in India conferences are supported by the High Commission of India in Ottawa, and we thank our partner organization for today, Confederation of Indian Industry. So with that, the second Make in India conference now comes to a close, and we'll get back to you with the third conference in a few days.